In this video, we're going to look at different ways how the media might influence political opinions. One of the key areas of study and the key questions that dominate public opinion and political communication research is how we are persuaded and influenced by messages that we receive from the media. The media presents information to potential voters, to the mass public, but how does that information shape political ideas, views, values, and ultimately voting decisions? There are different models of trying to understand that, different analogies that can be made. And these have evolved over time, and some of them have explanatory power in some situations. We're going to look at a few of them. For starters, the idea of the media as a hypodermic needle, or sometimes called the magic bullet theory, where the media injects political ideas and opinions into our minds. And so through their portrayal of current events, that is where the mass public is shaped. The ideas get into our head from what we see in the media. The key assumption here is that the audience is a passive vessel. We really have no agency. We are just receivers of the information, and through either, again, the magic bullet or the hypodermic needle, our ideas are implanted into us through that process. Now, a modification of that theory, again, sticking with the idea that the audience is a passive vessel, is that political elites play a role in shaping the information. So we might have an event that's covered, depicted in the media, but then that information is filtered through political elites, maybe podcast hosts, people that we trust. And it's that process, that two-step flow of information, that shapes the opinions. So it gives a role. It still envisions the mass public as a passive audience, but there's a role, an intermediary role for political elites to help shape and refine that message. And that's what really influences the mass public. Now, both of those models assume that the media is telling us what to think. But maybe they're just telling us what to think about. And that's the agenda-setting model. And the idea being that there is so many different things going on at the world at one time, it's difficult to choose what to present to viewers. And so the media has a role in setting the agenda, choosing which of those things deserves importance and which stories get told. And so according to, again, Sean McCombs here in Public Opinion Quarterly, their article suggests that there is a role for the media to play in picking what we think about, rather than necessarily telling us what to think. Now, the media can also influence what views and what issues do not get talked about. And Elizabeth Nicole Newman writes about something that she calls the spiral of silence. The idea that dominant issues prevail and minority viewpoints, because they don't see their ideas represented in the mass media, would be less willing to share them. So it's kind of like a Chomskyan idea of manufacturing consent, or at least giving the impression of consensus, and that as people feel isolated, marginalized, and outnumbered, those dissenting views really don't get shared. And so in this sense, the mass media plays a role in determining what views really get shared and get talked about. Now, that doesn't really hold in the social media world, because there is not one information ecosystem. There is not one dominant narrative or idea that gets disseminated, but rather there's a lot of different realities that we encounter on social media. And one potential model is called the twin helix model of opinion. It's not really widely cited, but here's how it works. At the top, there is that spiral of silence, whereby people, when they feel like their opinion is not in the majority, the dissenting view, less likely to speak out. However, what we encounter in social media, the idea of echo chambers, is that we get a lot of mirroring and reciprocal messaging. So we might feel through that process of encountering similar viewpoints on social media that our ideas are in fact more widely held than they might be. So people are emboldened to speak out. And that's what's sort of coming out the sort of bottom of the helix there. That we might start with that spiral of silence, thinking that it's a marginalized viewpoint, but then finding on social media, through our curated algorithmic information systems, that there are others that think the same way. And again, with those messages being spread, shared widely, amplified, were more likely to speak out against popular narratives. So just to recap, there are lots of different analogies for trying to understand this relationship. We've got bullets, needles, spirals, agenda setting functions. These are all different ways of trying to understand how the media influences individual level political views and attitudes. The big takeaway here is that these all have some explanatory power, but there isn't one of them that explains everything.